What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action and live from London at the O2 Arena. This Saturday, we've got UFC 286 featuring the trilogy matchup at welterweight between Leon Edwards, the reigning defending champion for the first time, against the man he stole the belt from last summer, Kamaru Usman. Awesome 170-pound bout right there in the main event. Co-main event at lightweight between Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. That one's a banger as well. You're going to see a lot of course, European and English talent on this card. 15 fights altogether at this point. We had some late notice additions in the past couple of days, so 15 fights on Saturday. Early start time, and I do have a few moneyline bets I'll point out as we go through it, but the props have not dropped, so I'll be back on Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time on this channel, talking with Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. We'll dive into this one, give our predictions, dive a little bit deeper into the betting side of things. So check that one out on Wednesday. I think 2 hours before that, I'll be on Couch Warriors show doing our weekly pay-per-view panel as well. So should be a lot of fun action on this video for 15 fights. I'll be a little bit brief. Try not to make this too long of a video, but hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's break into the first fight of the night. First fight of the night is at women's flyweight between Veronica Macedo and Juliana Miller. Now, Veronica Macedo, I think, is officially Veronica Hardy at this point, having married Dan Hardy a couple months ago, but Veronica Macedo is how we know her from her UFC record so far. But a change of name would not be a bad idea because she is 1-4 in the UFC, coming off of a 3-year-long layoff. I think Veronica Macedo, who's still only 27 years old, did try to fight within the past year, but the Brazilian Commission stopped her from doing so due to concussion-like symptoms. So that's not a good look, especially when she's 6'4" and 1 draw as a professional. Her one UFC win was over Poliana Viana in a very weird scramble after she was taken down. She did get an armbar off of her back. She's got Brazilian jiu-jitsu skill, but mostly she's an aggressive southpaw striker that wants to crash the pocket and throw everything into all of her strikes. And that's what she did in her last fight 3 years ago against B. Malecki, a much taller opponent. Macedo tried to take her head off in round 1 and then totally gassed out in rounds 2 and 3 and lost embarrassingly. So Juliana Miller is coming off of her successful UFC debut in the Ultimate Fighter finale, which she won, scoring a round 3 TKO stoppage from ground and pound elbows. So you've got Juliana Miller, who's a very awkward striker on the feet, but it works for her in a strange way. She's only 3-1 as a professional, but she's got a very good grappling skill set, good ability to be strong in the clinch and get the fight to the mat. She went 4-4 for takedowns in her last fight. Now, this is where the matchup gets odd because you've got Juliana Miller, who's making her second walk to the cage, a minus 425 favorite over Macedo, the giant underdog at plus 325. I mean, if you watch both of their last fights side by side, I understand that, but it's still, Macedo is very explosive and crafty on the ground. She can push off the cage and end up in weird situations if you take her down. So the fight will end up on the mat. It will be a weird scramble. I think Juliana Miller should be able to come out the victor just because she's got better cardio down the stretch. And her striking looks to be improving as well. So both girls are young. This 3-year-long layoff is very sketchy for Macedo, but I got to go with what I've seen, and I think Juliana Miller should be able to get this one done. Probably inside the distance. I'm liking the unders. If they drop the under 2.5 at around like plus 180 or more, I'll definitely be all over that as well. So give me Miller by submission. Lightweight bout up next between Jai Herbert and Ludovic Klein, two potent finishers at the weight class. You've got Jai Herbert, the Black Country banger. He's 6'1" with a 77-inch reach at this weight class. Very long and rangy kickboxer with power in his strikes, finishing 9 opponents by knockout out of his 12 wins. Ludovic Klein, pretty well-rounded as well. He's got 8 knockouts, 8 submissions equally out of his 19 wins as a pro. And he's going to be the much shorter man here, giving up, I think, like 6 inches of height, 5 inches of reach to Jai Herbert. But he's on a 2-fight winning streak and looking more comfortable up at lightweight for the 3rd time this will be at the weight class. He entered the UFC at featherweight and had a good skill set, but came short against Nate Landwehr by submission in round 3. Came up short in that very close, controversial decision loss to Mike Trezano. And he was a very good finisher outside of the UFC, but we've only seen him knock out Shane Young by that nasty head kick at this point, so maybe he can get an inside-the-distance finish here against Jai Herbert, who's lost 100% of his bouts by finish. He's lost to Ilia Topuria by knockout. He got knocked out by Francisco Trinaldo. He got pretty much grounded and pounded and then choked out by Renato Moicano. So there's a lot of guys that can one-hit knockout Jai Herbert, even after he's done very good work with his own striking earlier in the fight. So there's been a lot of spots where Jai Herbert has dropped the ball after scoring, a nice head kick, the way that he dropped Ilia Topuria and then could not finish the job. So far, Ludovic Klein is the more durable of these two guys. He's only been finished one time pre-UFC years ago. Since then, he's been good. I got to give Ludovic Klein a lot more advantages here. I'm agreeing with the price tag, minus 170. I got him at minus 155. I put a couple units on Ludovic Klein. As a southpaw striker, I think he's doing very well, counter-striking on his back foot, still maintaining power. Everything looks pretty technical and precise, and I think Ludovic Klein, after a bit of a feeling out process, will close the distance, employ some cage wrestling to slow down Jai Herbert, and do pretty good work in the clinch and probably get this fight to the mat. We've seen Jai Herbert suffer from that takedown defense, lacking in the past. So give me Ludovic Klein here. I think he does get this job done inside the distance, but it's tough. He could take his time and employ a smart game plan here. 28 years old, still room to improve for Klein. I'm just taking his money line, but if there's some juicy inside the distance prop for him, maybe I'll take a stab on that. But with all of the finishes for both guys, I don't think we're going to get much of a discount on anything that's like finish related for the props. So give me Ludovic Klein inside the distance as the pick. Women's flyweight bout up next. We've got Joanne Wood taking on Luana Carolina. A bit of an age gap here between these two Muay Thai specialists. You've got Joanne Wood at 37 years old and Luana Carolina at 29. The size is about even between these two athletes, but a lot more experience goes in the column of Joanne Wood, who's 7-8 in the UFC, losing 4 of her last 5 bouts. So it's not a very good record as of late, but you got to consider that she got choked out by the current champion, Alexa Grasso, last time she fought. She got club and subbed by Taila Santos the fight before that. Had a very close fight with Shevchenko. And Lauren Murphy, before that, was a close split decision, which I'm pretty sure Joanne Wood should have gotten her hand raised in that bout. I'm pretty sure I scored that fight for her and was shocked when she lost. So Luana Carolina, 3-2 in the UFC, a lot younger, a lot less experience for the former Muay Thai fighter here. And her last fight was last year in March at UFC London, where she got spinning elbow KO'd by Molly McCann, got put on a poster, and it was one of the most epic women's knockouts I've ever seen. So she was getting pieced up in round 1 before that as well. It wasn't like she was winning the fight up until that knockout sequence. She was losing, started to work her way back into the fight in round 2, but she got pressured by the bully and Molly McCann, who was able to just box her up and actually find her chin quite often in that fight. Joanne Wood, I think, has the much better technical striking as a kickboxer, has more striking output, better defense. And aside from her age and her record as of late, I really think those are the only two things going against her. She is a sizable favorite now, minus 190. Luana Carolina plus 165, the underdog. And Joanne Wood, you could have gotten her around like minus 155 earlier over the weekend, but this has started to move as the days have gone on. So I really want to put a bet on Joanne Wood. She is minus 125 by decision. I don't see her losing this one. I'm pretty confident she gets the job done, but 37 years old, you got to start anticipating a bit of a drop-off in skill level. Luana Carolina could make some improvements, refine her game, but overall, I just really think that the better technical striker is Joanne Wood. I think she's got better cardio, the better ability to keep up her speed and power as the fight goes on, so I'm going to take her to win here. Better experience as well means a lot to me in this division. Never been knocked out, although she has shown a little bit of durability issues. So a lot of these things about Joanne Wood are keeping me off of betting her. Her age, her lack of durability as of late, even against higher level competition, and just the loss streak and lack of momentum. Luana Carolina took some time off after that knockout loss last year. She does have nice pull counters. Her striking isn't horrible, but it's usually when she's the aggressor. If she can set the pace, she does quite well. If she's put on her back foot or outstruck or outworked, doesn't go too well. So give me Joanne Wood to get the decision in this bout. Probably no bet for me. Another flyweight bout up next between Jake Hadley and Malcolm Gordon. A grappler versus grappler matchup where you've got Jake Hadley, who's 26 years old, 6 years younger than Malcolm Gordon, and he's making his third walk to the cage now, going 1-1 in the UFC so far. He did drop the ball in his debut against Alan Nascimento. That was a tough test. Nascimento, a pretty underrated grappler in his own right, able to get that 3-0 decision victory. He came back and righted that wrong, though. Jake Hadley got a submission over Carlos Candelario in the fall of last year, and he did some really good striking work in round 1 as well. His boxing looks good, southpaw striker, good body strikes as well, good kicks. So able to strike effectively at range, able to get in close and show some pretty good takedown ability as well. And he's dangerous off of his back. So even when he's put on his back, he's very good at nullifying damage being thrown his way from, having a pretty good defensive guard, looking for the sweep or looking to throw up submissions. Malcolm Gordon is a grappler as well, but he's not durable in the slightest. He's been knocked out 4 times, finished for his other 2 losses by submission. So at flyweight, that's just a big red flag for me, is when a guy is pretty chinny. And Malcolm Gordon, at its simplest here, you've got Jake Hadley, who's a minus 380 favorite. Malcolm Gordon, a sizable underdog, and it's because Jake Hadley can strike and grapple. Malcolm Gordon really just stuck to grapple primarily, so you've got this overlapping skill set in this bout, leading to a big favorite on the younger man. And Malcolm Gordon, he probably has some of the skills and the experience to strike, but never comfortable to do so. Wants to close the distance as fast as possible in round 1, crash the pocket, and look to take the fight to the mat. So I just don't think any avenue is going to work in his favor here against Jake Hadley, who I see being just a slicker grappler, especially when he's on top, and the better striker. So I could see Hadley outboxing Malcolm Gordon for 3 rounds, probably getting a knockout at some point in that. Or I could see him taking it to the mat and getting a submission there as well. So very confident in Jake Hadley. The money line is, a little bit wide for a guy. It's just wide for a fist fight in general at minus 380. But a decent parlay piece, I would say, and probably look for the inside the distance prop on Jake Hadley. I'm going to take him by submission to win this fight. A fun middleweight bout up next between Christian Leroy Duncan and Duško Todorovic. So this is a matchup between 2 strikers. Should be very exciting. One of these matchups where just right off the bat, you just assume it's not going to hit the scorecards. Leroy Duncan is actually making his debut after being the middleweight champion in Cage Warriors, where he spent his entire 7-0 professional career. A lot of his amateur bouts were there as well. He does have an extensive 17-win, 5-loss amateur record where he's shared time between Cage Warriors and the IMMAF organization. And the only times that he's ever lost are when he's lost by decision due to being out-grappled. So he is a kickboxer, a very flashy striker, spinning techniques, and a ton of athleticism and power. But yeah, he's never been finished, so he does have that durability as well. And he's had a lot of opportunities to find himself in some bad spots. So, he won the championship by a highlight reel flying knee. Everything this guy has done finishing-wise, 7 wins, 5 of them have been knockouts, 1 submission as a pro. They've all been highlight reel worthy. Spinning elbows that have dropped people on multiple occasions, spinning wheel kicks that have knocked them out in a minute into the fight. This guy has got, very few flaws as far as the striking is concerned, just because he's so fast, reactive, and still pretty young at 27 years old. The spinning techniques inherently are going to provide some risk of getting countered, but this is a good dance partner in Duško Todorovic, who is an equally young guy at 28. We have seen him in the UFC 6 times already, where he's gone 3-3. And Duško has lost to, some good competition, right? Chidi Njokuani knocked him out. Gregory Rodriguez somehow, took him to a decision, decisive win for RoboCop. And he also got knocked out by Punahele Soriano. So 3 pretty good names that are still around. The 3 guys that Duško has beaten, Daquan Townsend, Jordan Wright most recently, and before that he had knocked out Maki Batolo. None of those guys are in the UFC anymore, so there's a vast separation between who he beats and who he loses to. There's some room to meet in the middle, but this guy is a powerful striker that is super aggressive but not very defensively sound. So it seems like the UFC is teeing up another highlight reel victory and a debut for Christian Leroy Duncan here. That's the way I see this playing out. I think Duncan gets another round 1 knockout of some type. You see Duško pulling back his head in a straight line, chin up in the air. He does take some risks as well. Keeps his hands rather low when he pulls out of range. So coming from a Taekwondo background, that's to be expected for Todorovic. But I just see a lot of opportunities for him to get countered, knocked out. I think the durability is much less for Todorovic, as is the cardio too. Duncan does have good defensive grappling. He's kind of adapted to all of his opponents don't want to stand with him. It's very dangerous, so they try to take him to the mat. He's got pretty good defensive grappling for most people, and most importantly, he's got good cardio. He'll get out-grappled, he'll be on the defense for an entire round, come out in round 2 and still look very fresh. So super accurate, athletic guy, good scrambling ability to get back up to his feet without giving up his neck or his back. So I got to take Leroy Duncan to get the job done here. He is a minus 180 favorite in his debut, but I don't think he's as finish dependent as his record would indicate. I think Dushko is more finish dependent in this matchup. So I could see this going to the scorecards and Duncan's done the better work. Or I could just see him in most worlds knocking out Todorovic in round 1. So that's what I'm going to go with here. Duncan by round 1 knockout. I don't have any bets on this fight, but I'm going to certainly watch for the fight doesn't go to decision. The under 2.5, the under 1.5, all of those are spots that are worthwhile to hit probably. A battle between two unbeaten fighters at featherweight up next between Lerone Murphy and Gabriel Santos. Lerone Murphy we've seen in the UFC for quite some time, but he is just not very active. It's been since UFC 267, a year and a half ago since we've seen him fight. And Gabriel Santos making his debut. The Brazilian is the LFA champion as of January. He beat Jose Delano by a round 3 stoppage. So, of course, as the champion of LFA, you're going to be sitting by the phone in case somebody drops off. And Nathaniel Wood dropped off of this card, so we've got Santos, the 10-0 grappler, making his debut. Lerone Murphy, of course, the explosive switch stance striker with very good finishing ability, very explosive and athletic. Lerone Murphy's got 7 knockouts over his 11 wins. So 3-0 and 1 draw in the UFC so far. He is still undefeated technically. That 1 draw came at the hands of Zubaira Tukhugov, a fight that I thought Tukhugov clearly won, but he got saved by that draw. I think they scored a 10-8 round, and then a judge gave one guy the fight apiece. So either way, I thought that was a spot that Lerone Murphy should have lost. So we saw that a smothering top pressure wrestler can kind of be the bane of his existence, but otherwise he's very athletic, good to get back up to his feet. But we saw with Makwan Amirkhani in his last fight, Lerone Murphy was very good defensively, from not getting submitted, but still had trouble getting back up against a very good grappler. He knocked out Amirkhani with that well-timed knee in round 2. So Gabriel Santos has got to watch out for that explosive striking ability. Santos is a BJJ fighter as well. He's got very good grappling on the ground, just not a good ability to get the fight into that world. But he does have a pretty good come-forward, Muay Thai striking style. Good power in his hands and kicks, but doesn't feint his way into range very well. Doesn't really set things up the best. When he gets flowing, his combinations are nice. He does have a good high kick and very good power, but not good head movement, not good footwork. In my opinion, I think Lerone Murphy should be the much better striker, much more athletic and fast guy here, which is miraculous that on DraftKings, they opened up Lerone Murphy at minus 135. He still is minus 170 on DraftKings, minus 170 on Bovada. BetOnline, I saw hit him at like minus 240. They've moved that down to minus 155, and this is, Sunday night we're talking about. So, I jumped on that at minus 135 on DraftKings thinking it was like a mistake of a line. I put 3.5 units on Lerone Murphy. Very confident in his skill set here. Confident in the fact that he's the guy in his hometown crowd. Been looking for a fight for some time. Gabriel Santos never been outside of Brazil, actually. Both of his LFA fights that he won were in Brazil. All of his other 8 fights were in Brazil. He's on short notice having to travel. And this is a big step up in competition. Lerone Murphy is no joke. And even though he's been inactive, I still think he can get this job done inside the distance. I'm going to think about like a under 1.5 round knockout for Lerone Murphy. Gabriel Santos, again, not the best striking defense. He will take risks, and even when he's having striking success, Santos will try to crash the pocket and clinch up and get the fight to where he knows it, which is on the mat. So as long as Murphy doesn't get subbed, as long as he doesn't, get chinned by something crazy, he should be able to win this fight inside the distance, if not by decision. So even though I think Murphy gets this done inside the distance pretty quickly, I'm just going to play his money line. Got that good price at minus 135. And I think money will move into Murphy's favor, so I would jump on that. But, Santos does have a path here. It would be on the mat, though, and I think Murphy is going to be good enough to not get taken down by Santos for extended periods of time. So give me Murphy under 1.5 rounds. Flyweight bout up next between Muhammad Mokaev and the debuting Jafel Filho. Filho is a Brazilian off of the Dana White Contender Series this past season. He scored a round 3 knockout on the show around September of last year. He is a grappler, though, so this is more of a grappler versus grappler matchup. Filho is from the Nova União gym, which was Jose Aldo's old stomping grounds, and he's got 14 wins, 2 losses. 13 of those 14 wins are inside the distance finishes, which is a pretty rare feat at flyweight, although a lot of those bouts were at bantamweight as well. He does have a win over Vinicius Salvador, who we saw make his walk to the cage for the first time this past year. So there's a lot to like about Filho's skill set. He does have good fundamental striking, obviously power in his hands, and he does have a very good grappling game as well. Good transitions, sweeps, and at least good enough wrestling to get a lot of his opponents to the mat so far. Compared to Mokaev's wrestling, I think it's going to be quite a challenge. There is a bit of this overlapping skill set here in this grappler versus grappler match, which is why Mokaev is a minus 800 favorite and Joffel Filho is a plus 575 underdog. Mokaev is 22 years old, so 7 years younger. One of these very young prospects that seems to have a very high ceiling in the UFC. He's 9-0 as a professional with 1 no contest. Also, in addition, he's got 23 wins and no losses as an amateur, so he has been fighting for quite a long time into his early teenage years. Flashy, explosive striking, as we saw against Cody Durden in his debut last year. Mokaev got that flying knee and switched to a guillotine to end that fight. Followed that up with that victory over Charles Johnson, just smothering top pressure with the wrestling, like 12 takedowns, maybe about the same amount of minutes in control time. And now he looked a little bit more human in his last fight back at UFC 280. Mokaev took on Malcolm Gordon, who's also on this card. And yeah, I mean, he got reversed in a few spots. He got his back taken. He was in some submission danger, but he stayed composed and managed to score that come from behind victory in a way. You know, it was like 30 to 40 seconds left of the fight, and he managed to lock up an armbar at the last second, get the tap. So that might have been kind of sketchy if that fight went to the scorecards, because there's a lot of control time in the favor of Malcolm Gordon. But Mokaev, I think he should win this fight with the smothering wrestling, just better cardio, more explosive power, the better resume so far as like UFC experience goes. So as long as he's measured in this fight, but if he tries to make a highlight reel statement in front of his home crowd, that could open up certainly a finishing potential for Joffel Filho here. So not out of the question. I'm very confident Mokaev, but not in terms of a minus 800 price tag. You'd have to find like a good price on him inside the distance, or maybe even the fight doesn't go. That's like a parlay piece of some kind. So give me Mokaev to actually get a submission after wearing out the gas tank of Joffel Filho. 2 lightweights making their first walk to the UFC this Saturday. We've got Sam Patterson versus Yanal Ashmoz. And Patterson is the English hometown athlete here. He's 10-1 and 1 draw in his professional record, scoring knockouts in 4 of those, submissions in the other 5. So 90% finish rate out of his wins. He is a long, tall, lanky guy for the weight class, right? 6'3" with a 78-inch reach for the 26-year-old Patterson, who's a grappler more than anything else. He has good range weapons, good distance striking with the long limbs. Up close is really his weakness. He can be countered and outstruck up close. His striking technique with his short hooks and short-range strikes, not the best. And he does have that tall man defense. He can pull back in a straight line, you know, keep his hands a little bit low, keep his chin right up in the air. So a short guy like Yanal Ashmoz, the Israeli fighter here, who's 5'9", 69-inch reach, a little bit more true to the weight class with a short, stocky physique at lightweight. This guy could do damage if he could get his way in range. He's got very good close-range weapons, nice short hooks and uppercuts. He's a 6-0 fighter here, but not the best finishing potential, even though his record indicates that. Okay, what I mean by that is 3 knockouts on his record, 2 submissions. A lot of these are just from him outpacing his opponents, and he's faced a much lower level of skill than Patterson has. Coming off of the PFL Challenger Series, he faced a fellow grappler in Dennis Hughes last year, so he was able to defend takedowns and score in rounds 1 and rounds 2 against Dennis Hughes. If people really push the issue, like he faced a guy named Ryan Rizzo in the CFFC, that guy was able to take down Yanal Ashmoz at will, you know, really just push the issue on that. But the guy gassed himself out, and Yanal was able to, you know, reverse some positions, end up on top, and then just outstrike his way to a victory. Even when Yanal Ashmoz is doing good work on the feet, he still resorts, kind of like as a rookie mistake, an inexperienced mistake, he'll resort to going for the cage grappling, going for the takedown when it's not necessary. So against Patterson, who's a very good grappler, a brown belt in BJJ, dangerous off of his back, dangerous standing. He's tall enough to get that standing guillotine on the cage. I've seen him do that before. I can see that happening for Yanal Ashmoz, who maybe will get hurt at range, rush in, for the takedown to slow things down, and then get caught up in a submission. I could see that being the case. So I'm going to take Sam Patterson here. I think he's better pretty much everywhere except for that close-range striking. So if he maintains distance, just gets a little bit better with his striking, or even tries to take this fight to the mat and employ some BJJ, I could see that happening. So give me Patterson actually inside the distance here by submission. The money line for this fight is a little bit too wide. Minus 260 for Patterson, plus 220 for Ashmoz. For two guys making their debut that are both in their mid to late 20s. Still a little bit wide, but I do agree with Patterson being the favorite here. Nothing I intend to really play from a betting perspective unless there's some crazy prop on Sam Patterson by submission, because I could see that as his most likely path. Another lightweight bout up next between Chris Duncan and Omar Morales. Chris Duncan making his walk to the cage for the first time in the UFC, coming off of a second Dana White Contender Series appearance this past season. This time it was successful. This time he scored the contract because he got a round one come-from-behind victory by knockout within the course of like 2.5 minutes. I mean, his opponent had hit him with multiple uppercuts, knees, hooks up close, almost had him out of there, but Chris Duncan showed toughness, did not fall, and managed to pull a right cross and then some ground and pound strikes that knocked his opponent out cold. So, came out of nowhere. It was a very exciting moment. But the fact that he had to show how tough he was just demonstrates more of the problem of how hittable Chris Duncan is. Vyacheslav Borshev actually gave him his first Contender Series loss, his first professional loss by knockout. Kind of similarly, right? Vyacheslav was just the better striker, the better mover, and allowed Chris Duncan to crash forward aggressively, swinging power shots, trying to look for the knockout, and a good opponent with good timed counters can really use that against him, right? He kind of shows his hand early, does Chris Duncan, shows his mannerisms, doesn't move his head all that well either. And then that can kind of be like a head-on car crash, right? Chris Duncan charges forward, his opponent times a counter, and then it's like a doubled force reaction. Chris Duncan's tough, but he could get knocked out by Omar Morales here for sure if he's sloppy. 29 years old for Duncan. He's got time to improve, refine his game here with a 9-1 record. 8 finishes among those as well. But Omar Morales is 37 years old at this point. I didn't even realize. He's been in the UFC 6 times, going 3-3 in those appearances. Now coming off of 2 back-to-back finishes, the first 2 finishes of Omar Morales' career. One was by submission from Jonathan Pierce about a year and a half ago. The last one was May of last year against Uros Medic, who actually knocked him out against the cage. A bit of maybe a premature stoppage, but either way, things weren't going to get much better for Morales. He started eating punches when he got trapped in the cage. So Omar Morales has got the upside of the grappling in this matchup for sure. He's a very strong guy in the clinch, good body lock, trip takedowns, and good reversals. If you try to take him down, he can wind up on top. He's a pretty big guy for the weight class. And he's got 5 submissions on his record as well. He's no bum on the ground. And I think that's really the difference maker here, because either guy can knock the other out. But it's Chris Duncan who, when he gets hurt, which is often, he rushes in to try to get the takedowns just to buy himself some time. And against his level of competition so far, he's been good enough of a wrestler to achieve that. But just like the last fight we talked about, this could be a spot where Chris Duncan gets hurt, he rushes in and gets his neck wrapped up in something. So Omar Morales has got a good back take. He's got a good tight squeeze on him as well. His losses have been a little bit problematic, right? Because he's been knocked out in one after never being knocked out before. He got submitted in his prior bout before that. It's good opponents though. It's Uros Medic and it's Jonathan Pierce. So I'm willing to give it a pass here. Where the money line is at, it's a dead even pick'em. It's minus 110 for each guy. Plus money may be being traded on the bookies right now. But I got to give the experience, grappling, just the better movement, like lateral movement, and he's going to be a hard target to hit, is Morales. And his defense is much better. So I give those credits to him. I'll give Duncan the youth. I'll give him even the power. And of course, the pace and the aggression. I think he can probably have better cardio if he keeps this fight standing for 15 minutes. So I'm going to go with Omar Morales here. It's just way more ways to win, better technique, refined defense, and better experience. But this is a fight that maybe you're just wise to play. The fight doesn't go to decision, or if you like Duncan, maybe play him inside the distance. But it's another spot where I'm kind of feeling the submission for Omar Morales. I think he can wrap up a neck if he hurts Chris Duncan, maybe gets a club and sub. So give me Omar Morales, probably a fight I won't have betting action on. It's just a very volatile fight. One of my lesser confident picks, but give me Morales to win. Featherweight bout up next between Jack Shore and Makwan Amirkhani. And that's right, we got Jack Shore, the former bantamweight, now up a weight class at featherweight. He was at featherweight before he made his title run in Cage Warriors for the bantamweight title. So it's going back a few years, probably like 2016 to 18 range. But Jack Shore is 16-1 as a pro, only facing his first professional loss at the hands of Ricky Simone. Last time we saw him in July of last year, he got clubbed and subbed by Ricky Simone after, warding off the threat of Ricky Simone's wet blanket grappling style. He kept getting back to his feet pretty successfully, nullifying as much damage as he could in round 1. But in round 2, he was blitzing forward and, not blitzing forward, but he was forward pressuring and ended up getting countered by a left straight, dropped pretty badly, and then Ricky Simone dove right into an arm triangle. So Jack Shore, changing things now. He has a nice layup of competition here, in my opinion, because Shore has got very good wrestling, good defensive BJJ, good offensive BJJ as well. He is a black belt, and his striking looks pretty good as well. One of his better performances that really opened my eyes to his skill level was against Timur Valiev, hurting Valiev a couple of times there, staying safe, and actually employing the offensive wrestling as well. Makwan Amirkhani, a Finnish submission wrestler, Greco-Roman background as well, 34 years old, although it seems like he's a bit older. Amirkhani has been in the UFC for some time, but really never having that much success, kind of trading wins and losses. 7 wins, 6 losses in the UFC. He's pretty much a front choke specialist, good anacondas. I think he's got at least half a dozen anacondas on his record, at least 3 in the UFC that I can remember offhand. Not really too much of a striking threat at all, especially after round 1. So it's either round 1 submission or bust for Makwan Amirkhani. Cardio not great, striking on the feet not great. Just going to be diving, head first into, really inaccurate takedown attempts after round 1. So as long as Jack Shore can survive that, I think he should be good against Makwan Amirkhani. Hence the minus 500 price tag in the favor of Jack Shore, plus 400 the underdog price in Makwan Amirkhani, who will be a little bit taller, have a little bit more reach, but overall not really physically the bigger guy too much. But yeah, Makwan, all of his wins that he's had, 7 wins in the UFC, I don't think any of those people are still in the UFC. If I can double check, I think they've all been cut. Mike Grundy was released. That was his last win last March in London. Okay, Danny Henry, I think, is still in the UFC. Yeah, Danny Henry's definitely still in the UFC, but Chris Fishgold, Jason Knight, Mike Wilkinson, Masio Fullen, Andy Ogle, who he actually knocked out in 8 seconds in his debut, his only knockout. All of those guys have either retired or been cut long ago. So there's a clear level of competition that Makwan can piece up with the grappling. You can certainly get caught in his front choke series, but Jack Shore usually sets up his takedowns pretty well. So give me Jack Shore to win this inside the distance. I'm not quite sure the method. I would assume on the ground he could probably get a submission or a ground and pound in round 2 or afterwards. So I would look for Jack Shore inside the distance. That minus 500, probably safe for parlays. Even live betting Jack Shore after round 1, I'm sure the bookies will be wise to that. And I don't even know if Makwan Amirkhani is going to be that dominant in round 1 either. So Jack Shore is the pretty confident pick here. Moving up the main card to middleweight, we've got a very fun matchup between Marvin Vettori and Roman Dolidze. Both of these guys are pretty interesting characters in their own right. The Italian Marvin Vettori, a very good wrestler and a busy striker as well, notoriously durable. And you've got Roman Dolidze, the Georgian Sambo and Jiu-Jitsu fighter here. Very good grappling, as we've seen increasingly in pieces throughout his UFC career so far, where he's gone 6-1, only dropping that split decision. Actually, it was a unanimous decision. It was just a very close one to Trevin Giles. So other than that, Roman Dolidze is on a 4-fight winning streak, a 3-fight finish streak over Kyle Dawkins in round 1 by knockout, Phil Hawes blowing out his knee and then knocking him out, and then most recently in the fall over Jack Hermanson, who he actually reversed in round 2 and got like a nasty calf slicer and then flattened him out and got the back mount, rained down strikes for the TKO. So Dolidze is going to be slightly bigger here, 2 inches of height and reach over Marvin Vettori. And Dolidze is 12-1. Like I said, only losing that decision bout and a close one to Trevin Giles. Dolidze has been accused of not making the best decisions. Sometimes he does chase the off submission like a heel hook or something like that, but we're starting to really have confidence that he can start pulling these things off effectively. He got the heel hook against Phil Hawes to set up the victory. But yeah, I think Roman Dolidze is still, if I had a gripe, he's still a little bit, awkward on the feet. He does have power and he's big for the weight class, but not the busiest striker in combination, not the best output, and he does tend to slow down. He's a very powerful, fast twitch guy. Very strong, but if he can't out grapple his opponent effectively, I think he's going to fade as this fight goes on. Marvin Vettori, a very good wrestler with an amazing gas tank as well. He's able to go to these 5-round fights and not really fade all that much. A 5-rounder against Jack Hermanson. Unsuccessful title shot against Israel Adesanya as well. Out-grappled Kevin Holland over 5 rounds. So he's got a lot of experience, higher level experience, and he's got the durability as well. So Roman Dolidze can't just maul this guy in round 1 and expect to finish him, right? So that's going to lead me to side with Marvin Vettori. Is the minus 300 price tag on him a bit much? I think it is. I'd probably lean towards like Vettori by decision if I had to really, lean on something here. Dolidze is a guy who, he's pretty strong. He can at least hang in there for 15 minutes, even though I think he will fade. Vettori, not the best finisher, scoring 2 knockouts and 9 submissions over his record. But in the UFC, not a really big finisher. And he's not getting finished himself. Neither man has ever been finished inside the distance by knockout or submission. So based on that, I would lean the overs in this fight. The overs I like. Marvin Vettori ultimately I think will win. More well-rounded game, better striker, and a great gas tank as well. So he can dictate where this fight plays out. If he wants to strike for 3 rounds, he could win that way. If he wants to mix in wrestling as Dolidze fades, he could win that way as well. So I'm pretty confident in Vettori here. Dolidze, he's a fun character, though. I wouldn't mind seeing him pull off the upset here at plus 250 or whatever his money line is, but I got to go with Vettori by decision. Women's flyweight bout up next between Jennifer Maia and Casey O'Neill. Awesome matchup between the young 25-year-old undefeated professional Casey O'Neill as she takes on one of the better battle-tested women in the women's flyweight division. She's always in the top 15, Jennifer Maia, and either challenging for the belt herself unsuccessfully or losing to girls who will soon challenge for the belt. Caitlin Chukagian, Manon Fiorot, and Shevchenko are the only women that have beaten her since 2018. So very durable, good cardio, and good minute-winning ability with her boxing. She has some ground skill, but rarely ever wrestles to get the fight into that arena. She does have her one finish in the UFC by armbar to Joanne Calderwood a couple years back. And Jennifer Maia reminded us of that boxing skill in her last fight, a decisive decision victory over Marina Moroz not too long ago last year. So Casey O'Neill, on the other hand, is coming off of a 13-month layoff. She's 4-0 in the UFC with 2 stoppages. She has that one rear naked choke victory over Laura Procopio. She's got the TKO stoppage to Antonina Shevchenko. Her debut over Shayna Dobson was a TKO, so I guess she has 3. And then her last fight against Roxanne Modafferi last February, where she set, I think, the divisional record in a 3-round fight for most significant strikes landed. She landed 230 strikes on Roxanne, who was 39 years old at the time and had made it announced that that was going to be her last fight. So got to keep that into consideration when Roxanne Modafferi, at that age, in her last fight, also set her own record, a personal striking record, I think 130 strikes she landed on Casey O'Neill. So the fact that Casey O'Neill faced Roxanne, who is an aged veteran, very hittable, and that was the first opponent that she could not actually take down. Granted, she only tried a few times and then resorted to striking for 3 rounds, but she got hit quite a bit from Roxanne Modafferi. So, I think we're starting to see some limitations in O'Neill's game, so I'm glad that she took 13 months off to try to refine those skills. And she's trained at good camps like Tiger Muay Thai, Extreme Couture. She comes from a kickboxing and BJJ background, blended those skills together pretty early in her career and started fighting at a young age. But, limited opposition so far, like I named. There's a lot of girls are not in the UFC anymore. The one that gave her the most challenge was in her retirement fight. So that's a little bit scary here when the money line is minus 170 O'Neill, plus 145 Jennifer Maia. And I think Maia's got better striking. I think her boxing is much better traditionally. I think she has better hand speed, better power, and she absorbs damage better than what I've seen Casey O'Neill. Casey O'Neill has not had the opportunity to face a really high caliber opponent yet, but I still got to see how she responds to damage, how she responds to adversity. Her cardio looks great, but so does Maia's. This is a 3-round fight. I don't think that's going to be an issue for either girl here, unless Casey O'Neill can wrestle and get this fight onto the mat. I think she's going to struggle against Maia, so I'm going to take Maia as an underdog here. Not sure if I'm going to bet this at plus 145 where the line is at for Maia, but there's some takedown defense going for Jennifer Maia. There's a huge amount of experience. The boxing and hand speed, I really think, goes to Maia in this fight. I think over 3 rounds, she could best Casey O'Neill in at least 2 of those, unless there is the chance that we see a much more refined version of the 25-year-old O'Neill after some time off. 34 years old for Maia. I'm not expecting much regression from what we saw against Moroz recently. So there's only been a few opponents, though, that have been able to take down multiple times Jennifer Maia, and even less that have been able to hold her down. And these are some of the top women in the division. So give me Jennifer Maia to pull off a slight upset here. Welterweight bout up next between Gunnar Nelson and Bryan Barbarena. Barbarena is on short notice here, filling in for Daniel Rodriguez, and as such, he is the plus 350 underdog. Giant favorite price tag for Gunnar Nelson, who's minus 450, and we don't see him all that often. I think he's had a little over a dozen UFC fights over the past 10 and a half years, so pretty inactive schedule overall for the championship level BJJ practitioner. I think he won some international contests in no-gi jiu-jitsu, maybe some gi contests as well, but 7 of his 9 UFC wins are by submission. He's got a pretty wide stance karate style, good in and out movement, pretty efficient with his striking, doesn't put himself in any bad situations until he dives in range and gets you in a body lock, drags you to the ground, and then he it's pretty smothering with his top pressure and good transitions, very strong body locks. As we saw in his last fight last March on a London card, he faced Takashi Sato and didn't get the submission. He just held him for 3 rounds, and the submission never presented itself, so he doesn't really force any bad positions, more of a patient guy, where Bryan Barbarena is a very frantic fighter, very frantic with his feints and his movements. Striking-wise, he's just a forward pressure brawler, very untechnical, but he gives up his back to stand up. He gives up his neck to stand up. He's just not very defensively sound, and he got choked out by RDA in his last fight. So anytime he faces a guy who's got any good takedown offense, Bryan Barbarena is going to get taken down. He can work his way back up to his feet, but that does tire him out. So his good quality, I would say, is if you're dead tired and he's dead tired, Bryan Barbarena is probably going to win that fight. He can work through fatigue and keep moving forward, putting his opponents on the back foot. But yeah, just a busy striker, a brawler. I think that Gunnar Nelson can stay safe and pot shot from the outside until he's ready to secure a body lock and get the takedown. So I'm going to say Gunnar Nelson wins by submission here. Would I be surprised if he's just holding position like he did against Sato and doesn't end up getting it? Probably not. So I'm sure all of the props for Gunnar into the distance or by submission will be very chalky, since he has finished so many of his bouts by submission. But the only world where I could see Bryan Barbarena winning this fight is if by some miracle he can pop up to his feet enough to, tire out Gunnar Nelson before he does, and then get some sort of 2 rounds to 1, 29-28 volume-based decision with some busy striking. That's the only way I could see him winning this fight. It would be some miracle like that. But at the price tag, at plus 350, maybe there is, more of a chance that indicates that he could do that. But I gotta say, Gunnar Nelson gets the takedowns here, has the clear path to victory, and gets a choke in this fight. Co-main event up next at lightweight between 2 strikers, Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. Should be a banger because these 2 guys have contrasting styles, although they both have power and really high skill level here. Justin Gaethje, a little bit more experienced at 6-4 in the UFC. I think 7 of those 10 fights were actually main event slots that were slated for 5 rounds, including 2 unsuccessful cracks at the lightweight championship. His last bout was against Charles Oliveira last May, where he got clubbed and subbed in round 1. Rafael Fiziev is more of a clean, technical kickboxer, a former Muay Thai champion, who has a very good switch stance ability as well. He can, go orthodox southpaw, pretty equally powerful. Good striking selection and boxing as well. And he does mix between fundamental techniques and, some chaotic spinning wheel kicks, jumping knees, things like that are more explosive. He's 12-1 as a professional for Fiziev, 6-1 in the UFC, riding a 6-fight winning streak. He only lost his debut against Mustafayev by knockout, and that was the only time we've seen him really cracked or make a big mistake. So coming off of that 5-round bout against RDA last May, or was it last? No, I think it was last July, actually. Excuse me. But he got that round 5 knockout, which I love to see that he's got late finishing potential. And that was a big test for Rafael Fiziev to pass over Rafael dos Anjos, a former champion, and a guy who wants to do the worst thing to a kickboxer, which is take him off of his feet and grapple with him. So Fiziev showed pretty good pace, even defensively wrestling, did not slow down, and still had his power to end the fight late. He's not going to have any of those issues with Justin Gaethje, who's a former D1 wrestler, but never attempts a takedown, lands a takedown, just wants to get in close-range firefights and land the bigger shots, and uses durability to stay in the fight and just end up the victor. And Justin Gaethje has got a lot of fight miles, even though he's only 34. It seems like he's absorbed, a 44-year-old's worth of damage in the cage. So that I'll give that in the favor of Fiziev, right? He's a little bit newer to the UFC, still 30 years old, time to improve, and he's got the cleaner striking technique. He's going to be able to land more accurately and efficiently in this fight, not waste any energy swinging and missing big the way that I think Justin Gaethje will. So Gaethje does have those strong low leg kicks as well. That's a big factor here and a big part of his game. But like I said, Fiziev able to switch stances pretty well and probably will be able to avoid a lot of that with that good movement. Now, I'm going to say better defense for Fiziev for sure. The body strikes I like, that's for Fiziev as well. And the experience, of course, the size, and probably just the aggressive pace and forward pressure I'll give to Justin Gaethje. But all things considered, it's the more technical strikers that give Gaethje the issues in his career so far. Guys like Dustin Poirier, guys like Charles Oliveira most recently. And Gaethje has been finished in all 4 of his losses, 2 by submission and 2 by knockout. I'm not sure if I even see a knockout in this fight, though. I could see Fiziev cruising to a 3-round decision here. You got to remember that even though he's been finished 4 times out of 4 losses for Gaethje, a lot of those fights were 5-round fights where they ended late for either him or his opponent getting the victory. So it'll be less of that like accumulation of damage in this fight, and maybe it'll just be going strike for strike. The cleaner numbers adding up on the board for Fiziev over 3 rounds. And I think he gets his hand raised here and increases that win streak up to, I think, 7 now in the UFC. So give me Rafael Fiziev. As this money line changes, right now it's come down a bit from like minus 250 for Fiziev to minus 225. Hopefully that keeps going, and then maybe it's playable around that minus 200. But something is weirding me out about getting in the way of Justin Gaethje, who could just land the bigger bombs, have those more well-timed moments, and cruise to a decision here. So I'm not too confident, though. Give me Rafael Fiziev to get this job done by decision. Okay, we've made it all the way to the main event of the pay-per-view. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Let's break into this trilogy matchup between Leon Rocky Edwards, the reigning defending welterweight champion for the first time, taking on Kamaru Usman. These two are 1-1 against one another in the UFC. This will settle the score. Kamaru Usman was the best welterweight I think we've seen. Championship-wise, it still goes to GSP, who had, I think, like 9 title defenses. Kamaru only had 5, but I think Kamaru's 15-fight winning streak in the UFC at welterweight was beaten when Leon Edwards head-kicked him with 56 seconds to go in round 5. Otherwise, Leon would have lost that fight pretty decisively, 49-46, 4 rounds to 1, but obviously not as much out of the fight as we thought he was. Managed to pull that from the jaws of defeat, which actually made that my favorite comeback moment in UFC history, I think. I mean, before that, it's always been UFC 117 with Anderson Silva getting that triangle choke with a couple minutes left in round 5 over Chael Sonnen. Otherwise, he would have lost that bout by decision. But the difference there is that, Leon Edwards was the underdog. He was the challenger, whereas Anderson Silva kind of corrected his mistake as a sizable favorite. The current champion, he was kind of supposed to win that fight and corrected that mistake. It was epic, but Leon Edwards actually stole it from the jaws of defeat at the last second. Epic moment. Super stoked that happened, especially that it happened after the 4.5 round mark, because I had the over in that fight. So managed to cash that and also see an epic moment last summer in August when that happened in Salt Lake City. So what's changed since then? What really does that change as far as, now it's going to be in Leon Edwards' hometown, his home country at least. So that's an advantage, I guess, kind of an intangible one. We know already that he's a very good southpaw kickboxer at range. That's kind of his game. If he's going to win the fight, it's going to be something like that, like at distance striking. He does have good clinch weapons. He's very durable, never been finished by knockout or submission across his 24 fights as a pro, where he's gone 20 wins, 3 losses, and 1 no contest. And he's on an 11-fight winning streak in the UFC at this point. Kamaru Usman, he was, I think, 15 fights on a streak in welterweight. Not as much of a title defender as GSP, but I think he had like 5 or so. So definitely the better finisher, Kamaru Usman, the better wrestler. And he's got like the better clinch work as well, and I think better cardio in my opinion. Kamaru Usman is a guy who's gone 5 rounds several times now, and mixing up all the areas of mixed martial arts and still having the gas to put the pedal to the metal and close out a 5-round bout. Showing knockdowns over guys like Colby Covington. He actually finished him in their first fight. George Masvidal, who'd never been finished before, he knocked him out. Gilbert Burns able to come back after a little bit of adversity there and show his own durability and resolve. So I'm not sure what really changes for Kamaru Usman after that one knockout loss, his first knockout loss in his career. Is his chin really beyond repair now? Is his confidence really shaken by that much? I think all that really reinforces is that Leon Edwards, sure, he's got some more confidence in his home turf now for this fight. He's got the championship around his waist. But all that really shows is that he can be even more one strike at a time and still have a chance to pull this victory off. Not a very good strategy. What it shows Kamaru Usman is he knows that he was winning that fight decisively, just like he was the first time they fought, scoring, I want to say 189 strikes totally to, I think maybe 70 of Leon Edwards if he was lucky in that fight, and then scoring, I think, 5 takedowns or 4 takedowns, 10 minutes of control time over 4 rounds. There's just a lot going for Kamaru Usman here that he'll probably even go to more. He'll probably wrestle more, clinch up more, and stand at striking range less to avoid that anomaly from happening again, which is that head kick knockout. So Leon Edwards certainly always has a puncher's chance, as does everybody. We saw in his 5-round fight just 2 fights ago against Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz actually hit him with a right-handed Stockton slap and then a left straight. 1 minute to go in round 5 after losing every second of that bout. He almost beat Leon Edwards. If he didn't taunt him, he could have finished him. So that just goes to show you that could happen to anybody, whether it's Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards. Kamaru Usman could finish this fight and stop Leon for the first time. I just think that all of the skills, wrestling, the clinch proficiency, the cardio, the output, just the pure power and the better experience, the better resume. I mean, that all goes to Kamaru Usman. That has not changed. All that's changed is the money line is less. I got minus 240 on Kamaru Usman, minus 235 on a couple books now. Not sure which direction that's going to go at this point, but he was a minus 400 over Leon Edwards in their last fight. So I like the money line. I put 4 units on him at minus 240. I'm very confident that not much has changed in this fight other than, we got the anomaly out of the way and we're on, Leon Edwards' home ground here, which I don't really rate as that much of an advantage. So give me Usman to do what he does, bully in the clinch, get the takedowns, keep on putting the pace and pressure on Leon Edwards, and probably win another decision here, just like he did the first time they fought. So, I'm not sure if there's enough time for Leon Edwards to get all of the defensive wrestling and defensive clinch skills he needs from August to March now. So I'm banking on this being almost like a clean slate, a reset version of the fight that was in August of last year. I don't think that we're going to see a timid Kamaru Usman. If anything, we'll see a more of a wrestling game plan from him and avoid striking at distance for long periods of time. Whereas Edwards, I think, will have kind of been rewarded from his success and maybe be more of a one-at-a-time striker and knowing that he can give up minutes of this fight and still pull off a victory. So banking on that victory not coming, give me Kamaru Usman to get his belt back by decision. As far as underdogs go on this card, I only picked a couple out of 15 fights, so I feel odd about that. But, of course, they are trying to showcase the European talent, the English talent, and, get some young prospects, some favorable matchups. A lot of wide money lines, short notice replacement fighters, debuting fighters, but ones that I think do have a shot more than their money line indicates. Veronica Macedo in the very first fight of the night certainly has more of a shot than plus 350 would indicate. She's been off for 3 years and still young. She could look drastically different against a fighter in Juliana Miller who's got little experience. Jai Herbert always has a good shot at distance striking. Dushko Todorovic certainly has a puncher's chance against Leroy Duncan in that fight. So there's some spots here where, the underdogs could certainly come through and spoil the party for the favorite. But overall, I do like a lot of favorites on this card. Okay, there you guys have it. All the fights broken down for UFC 286. Edwards versus Usman III. Can't wait for that trilogy bout at welterweight. And I love the cards that are in London. They always deliver. Always a super hyped atmosphere. So hit the like, hit the subscribe. I appreciate all of you guys who have helped grow this channel as far as we've gotten so far. And check out my live stream at 9:30 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday with my guy Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. Good luck and enjoy the fights. Cheers.